to the transparent caching panel. The title is, Cost Center of Business Opportunities. So we've got a great panel here to explore that question. My name is Barry Tishgart. Probably met a few of you in the previous session, and fortunately, I don't have to do much talking here. I'm going to leave that to our panelists. So I know a few more people are probably going to join in the room, but to get started and set up the topic, we talked in the previous keynote sessions about the explosion of on-demand video. Nobody could deny there's significant increases in traffic, and those increases are going to have impact on operator networks all around the world. So there's a variety of technologies that have come about that I'm sure you're going to see and hear a lot about at the CDN Summit and Streaming Media East. One of those is transparent caching, and I think you'll hear from the panelists. There's been a lot of interest. There's varying levels of excitement from ISPs that this is something we have to invest in and go forward with now, all the way down to not interested. And so as a lone operator on the panel here, I thought I would take the role as moderator and let these guys try to convince me why, one way or another, why this product is a good thing for the market, and if and how well it could take off in the U.S. Certainly there's transparent caching happening around the world, not so much in the United States today, although I understand there's a handful of operators who are in various states of trial and maybe commitments to purchase. But let me go through the panel and introduce them, and then they'll come up. Each panelist will give an overview on how they view the transparent caching market, what they see developing in the next 3 to 5 years. And then I may ask a question or two, but certainly this is interactive, so we're going to try to direct the most questions to come from the audience. So starting at the far right over here is Gary Southwell, who is the Chief Technology Officer of BTI Systems. Gary will give an introduction around a little more detail on who BTI is and what value they bring to the streaming media ecosystem. Sitting next to Gary is Alan Aralovich, who is Chief Technology Officer at PeerApp, another transparent caching vendor. And then Prabhakar Sundarajan, who is VP and Chief Strategy Officer for the Content and Media Business Unit at Juniper Networks. So those are the panelists. I'm going to start by asking Gary to come up and give a 4 to 5 minute introduction on his company and their views on the transparent caching market in the U.S.
So I'm Gary Southwell. I'm from BTI Systems. BTI Systems, if you don't know who we are, is a company that's been around for about 10 years. We have about $55 million in revenue. Our DNA, if you will, has been out in cable and carrier networks, building equipment that goes out, typically out at the very edge of their networks. So we have a small form factor solution. Our approach has been to simplify down the difficulties that people have had in the past with offering services-based infrastructure into a much simpler, smaller scale, environmentally friendly platform. Most recently, we've been working on the problems for our providers of lowering their costs, and transparent caching was a natural adjunct to the work that we had done at the optical layer and then at the switching and at the higher order application layer. So we'll talk a little bit, I'll try to set the stage a little bit about transparent caching, at least the way we see it. The rest of the panel will give you their perspectives as well. So let's just talk to that very quickly. This build slide is showing you the networks as we see them today. I'll build them out relatively quickly. If you will look from the left-hand side, you have a peering point. Typically, that's your presence in the internet if you're a service provider. Many service providers are out there don't have their own peering points, so there'll be a transit cost or backhaul cost to their point of presence. And then there's their actual network where their ISP is doing their own content distribution. This is a carrier-oriented slide. It could be a cable network as well. Out to a distribution hub or central office, and then finally there's a last mile access network. What I show here is wireline, but we can also adapt this into mobile, and that's exactly what BTI is trying to do, is provide an infrastructure that can go into carrier wireline environments, cable, mobile, and other environments, so that we can actually lower the overall cost of delivering content. So in today's networks, you typically see the content is being served from the internet and then has to traverse all these points. And there's different congestion points you're going to see within the networks. Most people have tried to solve the biggest problem, which is providing the content off the internet and doing caching there, and then providing a good experience from there out. The problem we see, though, as we've gotten into these carrier access networks is that there's a tremendous amount of oversubscription that goes on within the carrier's network. So that actually is becoming the congestion point. So what we're offering as a value proposition is to allow the operator to put the caching wherever it makes sense. In the past, the most sense was made by putting it at lowering peering costs, because peering costs would be in the hundreds of dollars. That's still the case in some locations, especially around the world, or in small operators' networks. But more likely, the costs are actually within their own networks. So it's their network infrastructure that is causing the source of the costs. So we actually want to go and solve that problem. So how do you solve it? Our point of view is that you want a flexible solution where you can actually put caches anywhere in the network. And you decide where it makes the most sense, where you get the most savings, or where do you want to potentially get the most source of revenue. So is it at a POP placement, or is it further out, closer to the edge of the network? We believe from our aspect, as we look at where things evolve over the future, the right solution will be further out to the edge of the network, because you want your cache not only to save money, but also to be a potential engine to offer new revenue services. So what do we recommend? Well, our point is you need to have not just a cache, but you actually have to have a solution. So we're talking about a network-aware, transparent cache in this case. So this is something that goes in and spans all the layers, from layer 7 right down to layer 0. It gives you a very simple solution which goes in. One of our customers, which we're allowed to name, is Frontier. They call it a black box. They like this because they said, gee, we can put this black box in 80 locations. We can roll it out in a few hours, set it up and run, and it just goes and runs. And it's independent of their routing layer where their other services are coming from. So it's routing layer transparent as well as being service layer transparent. And it has the strengths to the operator in that you don't have to do a lot of management with it, because we're always checking to make sure we have the freshest content as part of our automated algorithms, and then playing that out cost effectively. So the whole goal here is, if you're going to make this go further out in the network, you've got to solve cost problems, but you also have to solve operational problems, because those are probably the biggest challenges you have to distribution. So if we've done this right, then the operator will see a much improved network infrastructure, depending where he places the cache. And we'll typically see savings content-wise at least in the 25%, perhaps more if we get into offering protocols like Netflix, which we've just announced. And we can actually allow the service provider now to have an engine in his network which can allow him to offer new services, because you're actually seeing a much improved quality of experience. Okay, so I guess who's next?
My name is Alan Orlovich. I'm CTO for PeerApp. PeerApp is a transparent caching vendor. We've been doing that for 7 years now. Pure focus is on telco operators. Today we have 170 customers. You see there's a map on the right, so quite a global interest in our solution. We are a software company, so it's a software solution that runs over commodity of the shelf hardware. So what I want to talk about today here for this quick intro is not so much about what transparent caching is. I think caching, concept of operators caching is familiar to the audience, but sort of how it's going to evolve going from now, 2011, with all the new things happening in the over-the-top ecosystem with Netflix and others, and what synergies and trends are there, and also what are the important things to pay attention to as you roll out or look at transparent caching infrastructure. So the trends that we've been seeing in the market is increasing Tier 1 adoption of interest in the solution. So initially starting as Tier 2 oriented solution, we're seeing more and more interest as part of CDN strategy in transparent caching, where the focus on cost of network is clearly the focus of the CDN strategy and one of the themes of this forum today. Adoption on developed markets, so more European customers and North America, and also adoption in the mobile. Synergies we see in transparent caching, and how transparent caching is actually a part of the bigger picture and not just a focused solution, is also an interest and synergy with network element vendors. So we did quite a lot of work with DPI solutions and routing platforms. So something we're going to see more in the market. And synergy of transparent caching with CDNs, be that over-the-top CDN operators or pure CDN solution providers for operators. So when you do transparent caching, what you should care about, we feel that one thing is important is network flexibility. So whenever you choose to deploy that, and many factors can go into that decision, distributed centralized is something that's important that solution will be flexible and able to adjust to requirements. Should be network vendor neutral. So whatever is your BRS vendor, your core router vendor, it should be able to deploy that solution and not think of the compatibility too much. Scale, 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig, how you apply caching in this world, very important. For form factor, that I think the drive is towards more embedded and converged solutions, but we're going to see more both embedded and standalone form factors for transparent caching. And important things is that you shouldn't think too much. The black box that Gary mentioned, we also subscribe to this view. Variance in demand, season and peaks, various services coming and going. That's something that transparent caching should take care of. Configuration, that something should be transparent to the operations as well. So operational, for transparent caching to be adopted widely, should be operations friendly. And ability to do as minimal configuration on it is important. And finally, transparent caching, transparency to IP, to device, to content. That's key. We believe that also part of the there's opportunity in around integration with CDN ecosystem on the CDNs, and as well as over-the-top ecosystem around delivery, management, and resource sharing. So it's not a totally separated island, but part of a bigger solution. And lastly, sort of 3 to 5 years from now, so where is going to be, I think, in the network, our view that edge is the right place for transparent caching to be, that across all access networks, mobile and all types of fixed, that's where you achieve the best quality of experience, where you achieve the maximum impact on your network in terms of cost and deferring the upgrade cost around the network. And finally, the operational efficiency going to be, you see more of the embedded form factor in the market, so it's part of the convergent network infrastructure.
Hi. It's nice to see an overflow crowd here. So I thought I would take a slightly different tack from the other two that we heard. We talked about how transparent proxy, transparent caching fits into the network. At Juniper, we think of it as in a slightly expanded scope. Transparent caching, obviously, yes, but to the topic at hand, is it a cost savings or is it a revenue opportunity? And our answer is yes. So really, in order for carriers to meet the graph where the traffic costs are going through the roof and monetization is staying relatively flat, you got to make those things converge, which means that you got to think of this as a multi-service infrastructure of which a core element is transparent caching. So that is the thing that I want you to think about. Is it's not just transparent caching in and of itself. Yes, that makes absolute sense for network optimization at the edges, as you have already heard, but also to think about it as a core element of the network to optimize your entire layer 3 to network to become a layer 7 network, and use it for monetization for CDN services and for your own premium content for multi-screen delivery, right? So where we are, we have this product called Media Flow Controller. It's an ultra high capacity per unit product. It can fit in various different form factors, all the way from software on common off-the-shelf servers to in future devices that are part of the routing infrastructure itself, so that it becomes part of the routing backbone. Okay, all the way from the internet exchange points to the edge, as you saw earlier. The media flow controller can do that because it is capable of going from, say, anywhere from 2 gigabits to 40 gigabits and more. And it is capable of supporting all the different kinds of protocols and services that you need, whether it's transparent caching or content delivery, whether it is HTTP, adaptive HTTP, flash media, Windows media, right? So delivered to the set-top box. It is able to support all those things. The reason is that it has been architected as a platform right from the beginning. Platform meaning both southbound and northbound, right? Southbound, it supports various kinds of hardware infrastructure, various kinds of devices, various kinds of storage. Northbound, it can support various kinds of applications, whether it is different kinds of protocol servers. It comes with its own native protocol serving capability, of course, very high speed adaptive streaming capability. One of the issues in the market today is delivery is over adaptive HTTP, which means that it's not click and you see a stream. Every second something changes, something can change. There's a lot of requests and responses. So typically today's devices are not able to keep up with that. Media flow has been architected to cover that at 20 gigabits and above, 200,000 transactions, right? So ultra high capacity for today's protocols, and it supports additional protocol servers like Adobe's Flash Media, Microsoft's Windows Media, and so forth. So it's a very highly scalable and extensible platform. So Barry asked us to think about some of the challenges and opportunities and how it is going to be 3 to 5 years from now. So the challenges are kind of like obvious today, right? The complexity of the web and content media, the various kinds of devices, the various kinds of content, various kinds of formats that are arising. And encrypted delivery is an obvious challenge because a lot of the optimization capabilities that you might be able to do when it is just interpretable content like YouTube doesn't always work when you have digital rights managed encrypted content, which means that you need something that can work both ways. It can work transparently as well as in conjunction with the content provider, right? That's a very key. And obviously another big challenge is people either not having the right regulatory environment or misinterpreting the regulatory environment to say what you can and cannot do in the network, right? But I think these things will work themselves out, at least the regulatory aspect of it. But the other two aspects, we need an infrastructure that really can support it. So what are the opportunities that we see is, I think, mobile is going to be really big, right? As we move forward, people are going to be consuming it in all kinds of devices, in all kinds of networks, wireless LANs and Wi-Fi and LTE and 4th generation with tablets and all kind of mobility. That's a very, very exciting opportunity, and that's also a great monetization opportunity. You see location-based services, you see people having transportability of sessions as they move forward, and so this is thinking about not just optimization but opportunity for monetization. What are the different kinds of ad models that can be supported? Because a broadcast ad could be replaced for time shifted, place shifted, device shifted viewing, right? It's a great opportunity for monetization. And obviously enabling the multiple different services of deployment in the network, as I mentioned. I talked about not just transparent caching but content delivery. So what is it going to be in 3 to 5 years? What we believe is that it's going to be a unified application delivery network within the backbones, not just a layer 3 network, but a layer 7 network designed into it, right? And we really see that the world will move towards the viewers getting that experience and the economics of LAN-like networks in both landline last mile as well as various kinds of mobile wireless networks. And we believe that this kind of infrastructure is needed to support those kind of opportunities. Thank you.
You heard some overviews on each of the solutions that Juniper PeerApp and BTI are looking at in the market today. One of the key issues in this panel was not only the opportunity to save cost in a carrier network, but what is the monetization potential of that? Chris Osika shared some slides earlier about CDN federations and shared the need for some kind of platform to cross-subsidize or deal with the subsidies that might be in effect. So while the audience is thinking of a handful of questions to ask, I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question, which would be on our minds as an operator. So in addition to cost savings, how do you see the business model playing out, and how do you think that business model works with or perhaps encroaches on the territory of traditional CDNs? So maybe we'll start at the end with Gary.
Oh, okay. So we are looking at it from our solution standpoint that first we want to stabilize the high-speed internet service or broadband offering for the operators, because that's the only basis in which to offer new services. Once you've done that, if you put the device, our belief is as close to the subscriber as possible, that's where you now have the opportunity to turn that into a revenue engine. And there's multiple ways you can do that. You don't have to jump in and do this all at once. Our thinking is, taking a page out of the mobile model, which we're very focused on, is why not offer an HD over-the-top service where you actually have the subscriber pay a tier, maybe it's $5, $10 a month, and we provide him a very, very good experience for that content which he's downloading. Any form of download, as well as over-the-top streaming of services like Netflix. We think that's a simple way that an operator can get into the business. And then once they have that, then they can work on the other side of the two-sided business model and start working with content providers themselves and give them back an SLA on the actual experience that's being delivered.
So the question was try to delineate between CDN and transparent caching. Are they the same or different?
Yeah, so we're seeing a merging between the two, that the service providers are trying to. I think the answer was, how do you? If we believe that if you move to revenue models, you're probably looking more at a CDN model. So we're going from the basis that transparent caching today is offered as a cost-saving item, and some others may differ from me. That's BTI's proposition. And then on top of that, how do you actually turn that into a revenue producer? And that starts to blur the lines between CDN.
Alan or Prabhakar, do you want to share any thoughts on that question? Or?
Yeah, I'll jump in. As I started talking about, we really think of it as two sides of the same coin, right? So there is no way that people can just meet the economics of delivery just by optimizing their network, because optimization essentially is cost reduction, and you can reduce the cost to zero, and it still doesn't really meet the goals of the business to be a growing, thriving business that is expanding its revenues and growing its profitability. Okay, the only way they can do that is to also figure out, increase the revenue side of the equation on a per subscriber basis. So transparent caching by itself, yes, it is mostly targeted at optimization, and it need not be only at the edge, it can be woven throughout. It becomes the layer 7 substrate where the edge caches can then figure out how they back up to the internet exchange point. But once they have done that, now that becomes the fabric on which they can deliver other services. They can deliver content delivery network services, they can deliver assured video delivery for an on and opt-in basis for a subscriber, they can deliver specialized ad monetization for mobile, maybe location based, for landline, maybe geography based, content user subscriber information based. So there is a lot of opportunity that opens up if you have the delivery point. Yes, it's about transparent caching, but you have to think about it as an enabling fabric that on which you can then build upon. So Alan, you would like to?
Our view of things is that focus of transparent caching is optimization of the delivery of important service for operator, high-speed data service, and caching helps with that. And if we think of revenue opportunities around transparent caching, primarily they are first around subscriber services, helping with upselling of top-tier services around broadband, creating dedicated services that will come with some sort of improved quality of experience around that. So subscriber revenues would be the focus of transparent caching revenue opportunities. If we look beyond just what network optimization benefits are. And potentially also there could be a revenue opportunity around integrating transparent caching with CDNs, be it on-net CDNs or external CDNs, but integrating those two and merging into single infrastructure. And I agree here with Prabhakar that that's a converged approach to those two angles is important.
Okay, let me take a question from the audience. So back there on the far left of the room.
We all have faced the same problem, and I think we all address it more or less a similar way. First of all, deep packet inspection is not actually necessary because you can have, from a purely technical standpoint, these are layer 7 terminating proxies. In other words, the browser's connection actually is terminated at the proxy, and the proxy then interprets the layer 7 request as it is intended to be the frontmost serving device, and then says, do I already have the content? If I already have the content, let me just respond. If I don't, then I will request it to the application on behalf of the user. So on one side it acts on behalf of the server, on the other side it acts on behalf of the user and fetches it. And the rules, the delivery rules, the DMCA rules permit this, and you don't actually have to understand the content in order to be able to do that. You do have to be able to understand the requests. Okay, you need to say what object is being requested, how does it match the content that you already have, and these are all typically out in the open in the HTTP protocol. Yes, if the protocol is encrypted, like if it is HTTPS, you're out of luck, but that happens to be a very tiny percentage of the media delivery at least. So that enables us to address it from a technology perspective. It is not, deep packet inspection is not required.
Yeah, so the question was really around how does, what are the technical implications of transparent caching and how does that relate to the business model that Prabhakar was answering, and where does the business relationship have to take place? For example, if a carrier deploys transparent caching, do they need to then, are they acting as a CDN in that they're going to sign contracts with big content owners, or are they working with existing CDNs or both? And then I think secondly, there was a question on the regulatory and privacy side, which I think it's a great question, but I'd like to segment and answer it separately because it's such an important one. So any more on the technology and where the business relationship might land?
My comment on that is enabling technology exists and it does not require necessarily cooperation with a content provider. The way we look at internet today, that you're essentially looking at a set of applications that are being delivered, and by application we mean particular use of the protocol, so kind of application level. So you can think of flash progressive download, adaptive bitrate technologies, file sharing, software updates. So it's all classes of applications. So our technology enables caching of those in a generic way without sort of service-by-service integration with specific content provider, be it Netflix or YouTube or others. That being said, we feel that cooperation with content providers and them recognizing the value of transparent caching infrastructure for the whole OTT ecosystem is important and can help additional opportunities. Would be enforcing the business logic at the network edge that can come from a CDN provider or content provider, or improved efficiency by, for example, versus transparent caching statistically learning popularity of a particular object and can take third-party provider information about that. Here, take this object, we know that it's going to be popular. So that's on the technology side.
I would just add a little bit from the regulatory side and what's been said. I guess there was a little bit of confusion because there's slightly differences in the approaches between truly transparent and transparent proxy. So our approach is true transparent, so that we don't get in the middle of any of the conversations between the clients and the subscribers. We just gracefully inject in content when we have it, and we always check to make sure that we have the appropriate content. That way we stay well in line with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And this makes it very, very easy to go and enforce it. And our goal there is to do that so that's very easy for the operators to stay out of the trouble with the regulatory side and not have to actively go and manage the caches. So that they can let them run, and they can let them set it and forget and let them run and still be fully compliant and get the benefit of reduced content that has to flow through their networks. And then it just builds on everything else that was just said.
Okay. I got a question in the back corner there. The question was from an operator who's had technical problems transparent caching, in that some of the application providers or content owners made it very difficult, and some of that was a technical issue, some of it was a business issue, where some of the content was deemed non-cacheable by some in order to protect revenue streams, and some of it was a technical issue. So, the question was really, how do you deal with that if transparent caching is such a good thing, and a lot of the video from key providers is being marked non-cacheable? What does that do to the value proposition?
I guess my turn. All right. So I would say, yeah, a lot of it is the techniques that are being used here. So the trouble if you use URLs to go and cache them is there's dynamic URLs out there and they change all the time, and YouTube's a good example of that. So again, it's in the approach. So our approach, and others use the same approach, is to ignore the URL and go into the payload and actually do a hash and look at the value of the content and see if it's the same thing that I already have, so I'm ready to play it. And then you can have a policy, whether do you honor the don't cache tags or do you not honor them. And our approach is it's the provider's choice, because the reason they were probably put there was to make sure that in proxy environments that you can get blocked as to the revenue potential if there's ads inside the content. We're always providing that information back, so it's complete accounting and transparency. But again, it's a policy-based decision on the carrier's part.
Let me comment on that. So we meet just quite as well some feedback like yours. I think it's what we see. I think in the market that transparent caching was tried before, and as internet emerged, applications emerged, new requirements emerged. And new uses of protocols. So video and the CDN setting no cache tags and such. So I think what we're looking at right now is a kind of second generation of caching solutions that need to deal with all new requirements, scale, supportive video, and environment where URL actually doesn't matter. So that's a key environment for caching to zero, kind of transparent caching. And that's the way to go there is to inspect the payload and identify those unique objects and do not become an endpoint. One of the important things there is not just hashing, but the whole business logic that on the over-the-top side of things, of the content provider side of things, you need to uphold the business logic. And truly transparent solution should and does fully respect those requirements on the IP transparency, content transparency, and content adaptation actually for mobile environment. So those concerns are, bottom line, are today a result.
Yeah, I think I'd like to address one part of what you also talked about is the difficulty of caching things like YouTube. If you had used technology that was, from the early internet days that was intended for caching static objects, definitely you would have some of those issues. But the current generation of this transparent caches intended to optimize media delivery, they are extremely media intelligent. We, for instance, have gone in and fully understood how the YouTube player and the server work. So we have this notion of a virtual player in the system that essentially can serve as both the server and the player and really deeply understand. So even things like fast forward and rewind and skip and replay, all those things can continue to work in a fully transparent basis. So it will obey what the content provider sets. And a lot of the times, the regulatory environment is very clear as what the service provider can and cannot do. They cannot get into the way of monetization. That is really what it is intended for, right? As long as the originator gets a complete information on how they can substantiate the fact that they served XYZ and monetize based on that. The rest of it, the people actually want the system to be optimized so that the user gets the best experience possible. Okay? You have to remember that delivering it from the edge is one of the key motivation is to get the fastest response to the user, and this does make it possible. So a lot of the times you might find that people who have the wrong expectation of transparent caching, they change their mind once they see that it doesn't block monetization, it gives the best experience possible, and it can deal with the application semantics such as seeking and fast forwarding and things like that, as long as the system is built with the deep knowledge of what is going on, right?
So as an operator, I think we are in a degree of semantics, because transparent caching implies by the name that you transparently cache what's popular, right? If there's a viral video or a new hit movie that's been released to an online subscription service, chances are that you're going to have many thousands, if not millions, of hits, and so caching it could be a wise thing. And then there's a separate model that's not so transparent, where an operator may have cache space deployed and contractually allow an Akamai or a Netflix or a Limelight to use that cache space on some kind of monetary basis. So is that a fair assessment of maybe some of the confusion that's out there regarding what's a paid service versus what's a purely cost savings? I don't know what you would call it besides just call it caching without the transparent in front of it. Is that?
Yeah, I was kind of calling that the hybrid model when we were asked that. I mean, because Akamai, Limelight, others have gone into carriers' networks and put their caches into the networks. The carrier benefits because they see reduced cost, and obviously the CDNs benefit because now they have closer delivery of that content for their paying content owners.
Yeah, so from a Juniper perspective, Juniper obviously is a key supplier for a lot of very, very large carriers, tier 1s and tier 2s. They have been experiencing the need to say, how do I optimize my backbone and make that also the service delivery network? And so we have really looked at it as to say, how do we create a platform that they can use to deliver from the closest point to the user as possible, whether it is mobile or whether it's landline. And in some cases, it is used for transparent caching, right, where it's perfectly permissible. In some cases, they strike agreements directly with the content provider or with the CDNs themselves on a wholesale basis or a federated basis. So the name of the game is to say, how am I most efficient at it? How do I create opportunities for me to monetize? Because letting a Google or an Akamai put caches various places in the delivery network and use it as a purely colo gives them nothing. Basically, they lose all control over traffic, they lose all control over data and monetization. Whereas engineering the network to say, I'm going to be a multi-service edge delivery network and use it in various ways. That's what enables them to really empower themselves.
So I saw a question in the center of the room. We have time for a few more. So that's a great question. So we had one from a network operator, now a content provider, expressing concerns. And this one was over, does the transparent caching degrade the analytics, which would be used for monetization among other things, and does it impair the user experience? Is that a fair way to say it? Because you don't have control, whereas if you were paying an Akamai, you could at least rely on their statistics and the dashboard that they give you, for example.
Let me take that. In terms of analytics, what our transparent caching solution does is propagate basically the all requests to the origin. So as an origin service, you will be able to capture all the details about unique IP of subscriber, kind of device they're using, and the object they've been requesting. It's just the delivery piece itself that is offloaded to the network edge. So that's on the analytics side. On the SLA side, on quality of experience, the question I guess here is, who gets that call? Is it the network operator or the content provider? And in some cases, it will be that they are unhappy user will actually call internet operator and saying, well, my Netflix service doesn't work. What's up with that? And another case can be the content owner. I think the right answer would be cooperation, because clearly there is a need for network operators to optimize the whole avalanche of over-the-top traffic coming through their network. So the edge caching provides just the right answer to that in terms of network cost and happiness of their high-speed data subscribers. So the ideal solution would be in cooperation of content owners, over-the-top ecosystem coming and being part, and cooperative part at the table, and cooperating with network operators around capturing better analytics. What we mentioned before is actually feeding some of business rules maybe to the network edge, and doing that more of a cooperative effort.
If you get further out to the edge, that's the challenge, is to make sure you're still getting the hit rates. So, and that was a question we had, is we didn't really know until we started getting into deployments. We've been doing about a year now and about 10 different customers. So we're seeing that you got to have the right number of subscribers. So typically we're in the thousands. You want at least a couple thousand subscribers. And then we're actually able to see, with our approach, typically about 25% cache hit rate. Now, we've just added Netflix support, so we're still learning how that goes. But we think that can actually grow quite a bit in the US because of, at peak periods, especially on the weekends, Friday nights, in the evenings, that may actually grow if you have a high usage base of things like Netflix.
So when you say Netflix support, you are taking those movies and caching those Netflix movies right at the edge cache?
Yeah, this is a long answer. I don't know how much time I got. But so Netflix is a dynamic streaming protocol, and it breaks everything up into like 2-second chunks. So we're caching 2-second chunks. So, and being truly transparent, that means we don't have that next 2 seconds that's coming back from the origin server. So we keep that, and there's we can go through the whole statistical analysis that's done there. So we think it'll actually improve that, maybe another 5%.
To summarize, there's a lot of questions, both in the room and on the outside, about the business model and the direction that this is headed, and the implications to content owners, network operators, and CDNs themselves. I thought we heard some good answers today, but there'll certainly need to be more investigation on all areas of the ecosystem. And I want to thank Gary, Alan, and Prabhakar for joining the panel and sharing their thoughts with you today. So thanks.